Who reviews the reviewers? We do. This is Yesterzine, where we rejudge a magazine's best and worst rated games and dive deeper to find out what games coverage was like far enough back that someone decided to launch a NES only magazine in the UK. Which is apparently 1993. I'm not kidding you. N-Force really did debut with its July 1993 issue, well over a year after the launch of the Super NES. You have questions, such as why? How? Why? What? And another 5 whys. We'll explain. But even in mid-1993, in one of the few markets the machine did not dominate, the NES had gaming legs. There's a gaming heaven, a platformer licensed from one of the bigger properties of the early 90s, inevitably by Ocean. And there's a gaming hell, a platformer licensed from one of the bigger properties of the early 90s, inevitably, but well, you see where this is going. Weirdly though, both of these are joint winners. There's another Ocean game equaling our gaming heaven, and a British company tries to break America 4 times in one cart with the other gaming hell. First though, a scavenger hunt. It's weird how things go in cycles. Right now, the Addams family are as big as they've been in 30 years. In fact, a resurgence every 30 years is kinda how the Addams family works. As of this episode, there's a recent pair of animated films with a new TV series on the way. Before that, the famous live-action films of the early 90s, the TV series of the mid-60s, and the original cartoons are from the 30s. What I'm saying is buy Addams family stock ahead of 2050 or so. It's the 90s here though. We're right between the release of the 2 live-action movies, featuring the almost implausibly brilliant cast of Angelica Houston, Raul Julia, in his second greatest role,
Game over!
Christopher Lloyd, and Christina Ricci. A new cartoon series was on the way, and of course, there's video games. Even if I hadn't told you, you would have immediately guessed that Ocean would have had a hand in this with licensed platformers. You'd be wrong though. The first movie certainly got exactly that on every format, including NES, but the sequel somehow becomes a Zelda game in disguise, a callback to an earlier Addams Family game by Sunsoft. Between those though, the aforementioned cartoon spawned a game, Pugsley's Scavenger Hunt, and it is that which we encounter on the pages of N-Force, gaining an entirely respectable for a gaming heaven 92%. The 16 and 8-bit versions of the original are different games rather than any obviously doomed attempt to squeeze the full-fat SNES game onto a NES. The SNES, and indeed Amiga and Mega Drive version, was this surprisingly expansive game where you have to rescue the entire family from somewhere within the mansion grounds. You can attempt levels in any order, and there's what passes for an open world of sorts as you travel around the hub house to access the levels proper. The 8-bit one, on NES and Master System amongst others, is this simpler but joyful little thing. I say joyful because whoever was on the music of this one appears to have gone for an entirely out-of-character party remix of the Addams Family theme. The differences continue with the sequel. I own the SNES cart here, and Pugsley's Scavenger Hunt on SNES is a pretty excellent but absolutely rock-hard platform adventure where Wednesday has hidden one item in the hunt with each of the family members in their own levels, resulting in a basic gameplay loop identical to the first game, so much so that they could have switched the plots and entirely got away with it. If you've watched this show ever, you will almost certainly know what I've just set up in the last 3 paragraphs. Yes, the NES version of Pugsley's Scavenger Hunt is not like the 16-bit versions, but if I were to start a game you might notice that nonetheless it is strangely familiar to you. New developers, Enigma Variations, did try to cram the 16-bit game onto a NES. They just did it using the sequel's plot instead for some reason. They also make you pine for the party remix of the NES's original Addams Family theme, because after a promising start, I'll let you listen. And yet you should appreciate that music. because in cramming this game into the NES, it's one of the things that had to be jettisoned in the game itself. What you're left with, sonically at least, is a game that could have been on a Spectrum. Seriously, close your eyes for a second and have a listen. Graphically, it absolutely is not a Spectrum game. You sense the non-existent Sega version might have done better, as they did with the original, but it's a good effort. Every important part of the version on the Super this machine is here, and I suspect seasoned players of the original that encountered this could probably navigate through the levels purely on muscle memory. This does mean, though, that the pros and cons of that original are going to be inherited too. The game rewards exploration. I pick up several extra lives making my way through this shortcut to the graveyard. Almost every time you strike out somewhere you get something for doing so, be it sweets, lives or a power-up like this nifty flying hat. On the irritation side though, it is pretty easy to get lost. The level doesn't have a huge amount of variety and a lot of it does look like a lot of the rest of it. There's also a little too much pointless backtracking towards the end, where one mistake means a quite lengthy trek involving some nearly blind jumps to get back to where you fell off. Especially as it's very easy to smack into one of the entirely solid moving platforms and be dumped back at the bottom. That 2 hit points also feels tight, especially as the only way to get more involves defeating some of the bosses. And predictably, here lies the trouble. Having made my way to the graveyard, I start that boss, and his habit of firing 3 things at once at me, no cover in the level, and only 2 hearts, means he annihilates me. And continues to, because I can't leave this area until I run out of lives. Thankfully, the game does appear to have infinite continues, although these put you back in the main hall of the mansion. The immediate appearance of the boss is another 8-bit downside. Several levels have been shortened and a couple all but removed. It explains why I was finding what I played of this game easier than the SNES version, because that has weapons we don't have here. The manual gives more insight too, suggesting there is a completely safe space somewhere on the screen from every boss. It's time to do a cheesing. Well, if there's a safe space from this boss, I cannot figure out what it is. It's not either corner. He reaches those, and of course he rolls across the whole middle and there's no platforms. At any given point there's a safe space somewhere of course, but that's not a safe space. It's called playing the game. I give it one last try, putting in a password that doesn't advance the main plot, but does give me the 3 extra hearts you can get for killing other bosses. It's 5JXZH if you're interested. Of course we can't now do Freezy Dude because he was one of the heart bosses rather than the kidnappy bosses. So we go after Granny, who is being held in the stove not far from here. We absolutely need those hearts to get there, and I use a couple of save states too to make sure. The boss I do indeed figure out where there's a safe spot, and with patience and a little work I manage to nuke him. And you know what? With a sensible amount of hearts we can play this, and I like this. It's got a life, and for want of a better word, joy, that's absent from a lot of 8-bit platformers. I'm not saying this is even in the ballpark of Sonic or Mario 3, but it's got that similar feel of a quality platformer. If you were here, in mid-1993 in the twilight of the NES's existence, then there were precious few releases like this. Now, maybe you'd choose to play essentially the exact same game with the extra bits back on the Sup-Nin-Ensis, but I don't think this should be ignored. You'll probably be playing it on an emulator because, like virtually all the games this month, it's rare and expensive. But if you do, this version is shorter, simpler, and requires less of a time commitment to maybe just finish, especially with that password. A worthy gaming heaven. A curiosity here, the joint gaming heaven is Super Jane's Pond. This though isn't the original Jane's Pond, but the sequel Robocod. The original was never released on NES. And the observant might realise that's not NES footage in the background. Because this wasn't released on NES either. This review appears to be the only evidence it ever existed. There was supposedly another review in Nintendo Game Zone issue 10, but that too seems lost to time. But regardless, Robocod has been ported more times than your mum on a cruise ship. SNES, Master System, Mega Drive, Game Boy, Game Gear, PC, C64 and even the bloody Archimedes in period. And then a huge pile of things since. Most recently the Nintendo Switch in 2019. you can play it on bloody everything. So even if the NES version does appear, it'd be a curiosity at best. But enough about games, you want to know about paper. And what absolute bloody idiots thought a NES magazine launched in mid-1993 had a bright and lengthy future. How did we get here? What caused this? Did it, in fact, have a rosy future? Well, to answer those questions, we have to go much further back from the launch of N-Force. Back to 12 months earlier when Impact Magazines launched a title called N-Force. Wait, what? Is this thing on? That's the last time I buy a time machine from the middle aisle in Aldi. Unbelievably though, this is accurate. If you look closely at our N-Force, it's described as Volume 2, because yes, it replaced a magazine launched just 12 issues earlier. OG N-Force is a magazine for all Nintendo systems, which starts strongly with an advert for Sega games. There's nothing wrong with OG N-Force as a magazine really though. Some nice features, well written and pretty high word count pages, and even 273% reviews should I ever wish to put them on trial. Although one of those is our old friend Hook on the NES, for which I'm going to preemptively acquit them. Top game, Legend the Mystical Ninja, one of the few in that series to see a UK release. Worst game, Pit Fighter, also on the SNES, but there are a few situations in which any version of Pit Fighter is not one of the worst things in any room that isn't the Conservative Party conference. 12 months later, Volume 1 comes to an end, confusingly badged as Ultimate N-Force, which you'd be forgiven for not noticing, as it's also apparently the official magazine of a British breakfast TV show that mentioned games almost never. A small editor's note at the start mentions the impending split, saying you'll be pummeled for the rest of the issue with the reasons. While the NES gets a kicking in several reviews, it's the SNES that receives the hell, with the unloved California Games 2. I've not played this on SNES, but I have it on Master System and it's basically a mistake in game form. And the NES gets the top mark for Alien 3. Again, not played that version, but I have the Master System where 84% is an entirely fair award for a quality game. I mention this mainly because I did step through the whole magazine looking to be pummeled. Finally, on page 68, there's a 2-page advert for what I'm sure you'd worked out before now would be the other magazine spawned from this, SNES-Force. Which is actually the first time the readers would have been told this, leaving smarter Game Boy owners wondering where they had a home. The full explanation is on page 74. N-Force will be a magazine 100% dedicated to the NES, just the NES, and nothing else, just NES, no anything, just NES. And a Game Boy supplement. So not 100% NES then. Said GB Force supplement is also in SNES Force, and you may be smelling where that's going as well. The magazine ends with the traditional stock text buyer's guide, but special points for managing to stretch it to a full 7 pages you don't have to do any writing for every month. That might be some sort of record. The back page ad is neatly for the Game Genie, and remember that, because it'll seem like I plan these things much better than I do. So yes, the next month here comes along N-Force issue 1 for the second time in 2 years. The world's only NES-only mag. If you are the world's only anything, you are generally either a genius or an idiot. But still, the world's only NES mag, apart from the bit that's about the Game Boy. The editor Nick Roberts starts bullish, the first ever console magazine to be totally devoted to the Nintendo Entertainment System. Except for the GB section, which unfortunately for him is introduced in a giant promo section right next to those words. Every page of this magazine is 100% for your console, except for the Game Boy section. Don't forget, this is the only magazine for 100% NES action, except for the... Look, okay, I'm done now. I assume they're getting round it with the supplement wording. And besides that, it's not even the only hyperbole going on here. World's first ever magazine for the NES? You mean other than literally all Nintendo-focused magazines produced before the debut of the Game Boy? Or, since this magazine covers Game Boy, I may have mentioned it, before the debut of the S Nintendo E system? Given how late we are, 6 new games really isn't bad at all. Although given we mark in percentages, giving 2 of them 92 and 2 more of them 54 is just weird. The others, by the way, are a Simpsons game, whose review of For Platform and Simpsons Game Fans really makes me wish they'd given it 4% fewer, and 75 for Crash Dummies. There's nothing wrong with the Game Boy section either, although 8 pages includes this contents page and 2 adverts. So I'm not sure the GB owners would have been coming back to pay £1.50 for 2 reviews, a preview and a very simple player's guide. For the NES owners though, there's little to complain about, although I don't know if their promise of more lengthy guides is delivered, with a paragraph on each level of a 5-year-old platformer and a picture of a tree. Perhaps not surprising when the magazine itself is only 60 pages if you discount the Game Boy portion of an 100% NES magazine. I'm not sure, and the cynical would suggest the motivation behind this split was merely to pull the plaster off the wound of wanting to be a new generation magazine, without immediately burning all the readers who had yet to upgrade. And thus it's worth looking at the first SNES-Force, and it's obvious where the focus lies immediately. It's 100 pages, or 92 ignoring the Game Boy parts of this 100% SNES magazine, but even that is 8 pages larger than the previous issue of the combined magazine had been. We'll cover the first bit immediately. That Game Boy part is identical to that in N-Force, and for a supplement it's weird it's literally in the index of the magazine as part of the normal page numbers. NES owners would be quietly happy that there's only 8 games reviewed in Superforce, but it has to be said there's some stonkers here. And one stinker. NBA All-Star Challenge. While SNES-Force let it off with a 63, Mega had given it 19. If you want a tie-break, pop into the description for an episode of top YouTube series Zylog and Moto and let Dave explain to you what he thinks of it. But at the top end, this issue has the excellent Lost Vikings from the developers who would later give us Everything Warcraft, a classic puzzle platformer whose main fault is getting very difficult in its later stages. That doesn't even win, because for a second month in a row that's Alien 3, here on the SNES, and again no objection, although 12 pages of coverage is really pushing the boat out. Hang on though, there's an explanation. The thing to highlight from SNES-Force though is them using the extra space to deliver on that guide's promise. It's a full 15 pages, and alongside little cheats and action replay codes for a whole bunch of games, they blow open Zelda Link to the Past over 4 pages, a guide to Street Fighter 2 on its most difficult mode, and a complete solution for Starwing. Then 6 more pages of codes and cheats. Lastly, there is a surprisingly honest look behind the scenes, a story of how they'd planned a Terminator 2 cover, but the game had drifted past its release date. While they'd had a 95% complete version which they could have reviewed, they didn't, because the game's release date is still after the next issue. This of course explains the bonus Alien feature. Those pages were supposed to have been T2. Interestingly, it also promises the second issue will still be 100 pages but cheaper. And it was. But it did not have a T2 cover. The game was reviewed, unheralded and deep within the review section, where at 46% it is the worst thing in the issue. We may have to come back here. Back over at the 8-Bit magazine, things look okay in issue 2. Mario movie cover, 5 reviews, although 3 of them are from Codemasters. Same page count and a knockdown price subscription offer for £19.50, a mere £1.50 more than just buying the magazines in the shops. Innovative. Not sure what happened to everyone taking them up on that, because there wasn't an issue 3. Unsurprisingly, not nearly enough people wanted a NES-only magazine that mostly existed to review Codemasters Spectrum cast-offs, and it disappeared. Whether that was always the intention, who knows, but you'd think if so they might at least have not bothered getting the binders produced. SNES-Force did better, lasting up to the publisher's demise 10 months later, although predictably they'd dropped the GB section as soon as it couldn't be used to fill 2 magazines. The 10th issue looks much like the first, but a little smaller. It's a shame because it seems a nice magazine. It's good timing though, because what would turn out to be the last issue of their 100% SNES magazine, except when it had bits about the Game Boy, had the first reveal of Project Reality, 3 years before we'd actually get to play the damn thing in the UK. For more information, we would consult their mind-blowing Silicon graphics feature in the next issue. But still, at least this experience taught Impact the perils of launching a single format magazine absurdly late in the life of a machine. Oh. So gaming hell number 1, Cool World. I probably over-egged it when I called this one of the bigger licensed properties of the early 90s. But in my defence, that was in service of a joke, and I was really hoping you'd have forgotten about it by this point. It was, though, theoretically one of the big movies of 1992. After Who Framed Roger Rabbit was a hit, people assumed that was because of its innovative and frankly still beautiful combination of live action and animation, rather than the fact it's a bloody good movie. And thus Hollywood did as Hollywood does. They made another one. Of it. That's not quite how it was supposed to be. Cool World is about a cartoonist in a cartoon world he wrongly thinks he created. There, he meets another human, a detective who is trying to stop a cartoon who wants to escape the world. She should be called Jessica Human, but in fact goes by the somehow even worse name, Hollywood. Spelled like this. It was supposed to be an adult-orientated horror film, but got subcommitteed into a family film you could drag a teenage boy to. Predictable results happened. The film bombed harder than one of Acme's finest. Still, there was a game from Ocean alongside the film for the viable computers. Despite, or perhaps in an effort to make up revenue after the failure of the film, a year later the 3 Nintendo consoles got in on the act. The Game Boy game is a conversion of the existing one, but for reasons best known to Ocean's marketing team, the NES and SNES got entirely distinct games from the original, and each other. And here's the NES one. Oh wait, no, that's SimCity on SNES. Hang on. There it is. You see the confusion. I described Cool World as a platformer, but that's only about 75% true. As you can see from my first non-manual reading go, here it's got a bit of a Streets of Rage or Golden Axe feel to the first level, where you can move into or out of the screen, resulting in the slightly farcical sight of you avoiding all the enemies by walking along the bottom. Cool World is smarter than that though. The goal is actually to get into the Slash Club, as I presume the movie tells you, but so in this case does the surprisingly well written manual. Before you go in, it's absolutely worth exploring the back of the scene, where there's a more traditional platform-like arrangement where you can get up high and find some bonuses like the pen that can suck in enemies, and some extra bombs and erasers, both of which are effective at longer ranges. And even with how generous this game is with the amount of energy it gives you, then you are absolutely going to need it. Everything is after you. Everything infinitely respawns, which I guess makes some sense in context since they are in fact all just drawings. Also because the controls are awkward. Yes, they've got an extra dimension to be dealing with here, but you would really have thought that Ocean would have mastered good NES platform controls by this point. They had, of course. We've pretty much just literally seen them doing it with 2 Addams Family games. But here it's awkward and stilted. Equally, on this Main Street level, it really is not as obvious as it should be what is a platform, and more than once you fall into the clutches of the pile of enemies who've been following you down below. There's some puzzle depth to the game. The guards in the club need distracting, and the best way to do that is to blow up a bin near them, which involves pushing the bin near them and then setting light to it with a bomb, so I hope you haven't all used your bombs before you got to this point. The manual does warn you might need a certain number of special weapons to pass a boss, which technically this is, but still it's poor game design really. But it's the next section that solidifies I'm not going to be recommending this one. You won't know it if you don't read the manual, but for reasons I don't quite understand, you have to get to this window and then jump through it. To do so, you need to get up on the bar and just accept there's going to be damage, because despite what the manual says, there is no avoiding this barman. You then have to jump across all 3 of these platforms, avoiding the neon lights. It's obvious to a casual glance that this is impossible, so what you actually have to do is guess or luck into the ways that you can jump that the game considers avoiding the neon. It takes me ages. I went to look at the full completion video from World of Long Plays, and it takes them bloody ages too. From there we go to the sewer section, which illustrates the other major control issue with the game. B is used for firing your current weapon. Select selects it. But B is also used for crouch. you will spend 75% of your time crouching when you mean to fire something, or suck them up with the pen. The only remotely reliable way I found was to double tap the button, and even then it's sketchy. In a game that swamps you with enemies in platform terms, it's not viable. Which, given how much else we're looking at this episode, unfortunately brings us to a conclusion. Cool World has good ideas. The long play proves this. Having a slightly more clever platformer is very interesting, and it's a natural evolution in many ways from the likes of the Dizzy games. Unfortunately, the information is just all cocked up on NES. And the difficult controls and poor graphics means that you are foiled from actually doing what you need to do at every step. Always at the back of your mind is you might fall victim to giving an enemy a damn good crouching, or your path being essentially invisible in the scenery, and in levels this large you'll never see it. It's a shame really, and in this way it parallels the movie. It could have been good. It should have been good. But every event that happened in production seemed destined to ruin the experience entirely. We've met these chaps before, but here's the revision guide. Codemasters, a legendary publisher of video games who were bought by EA about 12 seconds after I described them as one of the last of the big independents on this very show. Back in the late 80s, their stock in trade was straight to budget releases for the 8-bit home computers in the UK. The kind of thing that, selling for $2.99, were a lot more accessible for your pocket money restricted kid than a £10 full release title. Indeed, Codemasters were scathing of people who charged more than that. Right up until they started doing so, anyway. As the 8-bit computers started to falter, Codies switched to 16-bit, but also started to look at the possibilities of consoles. Using distinctively shaped carts, Micro Machines, Cosmic Spacehead, and Fantastic Dizzy made their way to the Sega Master System in Europe. The SMS was already dead in the USA though, so in conjunction with a company called Camerica, they sought to get these games onto the NES as well. The problem was they already had Nintendo in a huff. The Game Genie cheat device Nintendo were not pleased with in the slightest, and they'd just lost a lawsuit against Codemasters and distributors Galoob over it. Whether it came from the Codies or Nintendo side I'm not sure, but Codemasters and Camerica decided to launch their NES games without permission from the Big N. This was tricky. Nintendo controlled releases on their systems by means of a security lockout chip called the 10NES. The technical details are beyond us now, but unless it sees a twin in the cartridge, then it will not play the cartridge. This is a problem because the specifics of the chip itself were protected by patent and copyright, so Camerica couldn't simply buy a batch of the same Sharp-produced chips and program them as Nintendo had. So they worked around, in multiple ways. There was the brute force method, cartridges like my copy of the game we're about to look at, where you simply plugged a real game in the back and it referred the checks to the lockout chip in that cart. Then they went further and reverse-engineered their own distinct version of the chip. The Aladdin Deck Enhancer included this and other stuff shared by most games, allowing Camerica to release the games at a cheaper price if they plugged into it. And finally, having got that chip, all but one of those games got cart-only releases anyway. Nintendo sued again. Nintendo lost again. In an effort to bulk the NES library, several of these games were actually combinations of 4 related former $2.99 titles ported to the machine, just as they're done for compilation releases on the computers. And one of those, Quattro Sports, is our other gaming hell this month. In the UK though, the NES got this as Super Sports Challenge, as only one of the games, BMX Simulator, is the same as the computer release of Quattro. Instead, we also get Soccer Simulator, and just to really confuse you, Pro Tennis and Baseball Pros. That's 4 $2.99 titles for only £35, hang on. Excellently, on my copy, Soccer Simulator and BMX Simulator are swapped. Select one and you'll get the other. I hope this isn't an indication of quality, but I meant to start this with BMX Simulator, the only one I know of in computer form, and landed on the footy. Soccer Simulator then. It has its roots in a 5-year-old game called 4 Soccer Simulators, which optimistically considered 11-a-side soccer, street soccer, indoor soccer and a skills mode to be 4 different games. They also sold it at full price, despite this near coinciding with them telling Amstrad Action no one needed to do that. Despite that, we only get the 11-a-side mode here. Apparently £35 isn't enough for Codemasters to let you have everything. I say soccer simulator, but what it looks a lot more like is kick a pizza around simulator. The look is consistent with a lot of early 8-bit football games. I'd throw Microprose Soccer in as a first suggestion, for instance, with chunky marionette players stiffly running around the place. It has problems. Directing players is tricky, and I spend a lot more time running round the ball than collecting it. I also struggle in the early game to direct passes, and the game even feels the need to be a bit passive-aggressive at me about it. The US team I'm playing, one of only 8, shouldn't be the best in the game, but they certainly act like it. They have a nasty habit of scoring what can only be described as worldies from barely inside my half, which give me exactly no chance to react with either defender or keeper. This isn't why I'm losing, of course, although it certainly doesn't help. Those shots never seem to work out for me, and we go into half-time a mere 7-0 down. It goes better in the second half, but we end with a score representative of the cost of getting an ambulance when you need one in each country. It's not offensive as a game, but in a world not short of football games, not even on NES when Nintendo had already made 2 by this point, I'm not sure why this is what you'd want to play. BMX Simulator is a game I should like. I love a super sprint-like thing in general, but I've never got on with it on computers. It's got awkward controls, a million little obstacles that stop you, but virtually never stop the AI, and one crash is generally fatal because the computer versions tend to start you facing in whatever bloody direction it likes. Frequently, the wrong one, directly in front of another obstacle. Stepping into this game, I discover basically everything I just said. The controls aren't a disaster, but you're against AI that you have to be absolutely perfect to beat, and on courses where just too much has been crammed onto a low-resolution screen. It didn't seem to start me facing the wrong way at any point, but I'm not in any danger of winning a race and getting to anything beyond the first 2 courses. And you know what? I don't really have any motivation to either. If you're emulating, or even if you've got a NES, Codemasters themselves have the solution to this problem, and it is called Micro Machines. Baseball Pros, the only one that doesn't claim to be a simulator, and that's probably for the best. It's also the only one I don't think is a computer game converted. Presumably Codemasters thought a game around us might get the Americans in. They know what they're doing though. The default team includes both Bill and Ted, as well as Homer and Bart. The team names might be more of a problem. Nonetheless, we choose the London Royals, for whom 1 home run equals 1 respect, and get to it. The first clue it's not a simulator is my ability to hit almost everything pitched to me. That's not how round a ball even works. The computer seems to be struggling with the fielding too, and with the actual running automated, I fairly quickly load up the bases, which makes this a really excellent time to hit a home run. Oh, there it is. You sense from the computer player's exploits that the fielding is going to be awkward, and you'd be right. Any straight ball gets hit, and you chase them across the floor using players who do not appear to have run anywhere in their lives before. The computer also seems to get away with pitches that you are absolutely pinged for as well, which irks. There are some weirdly simulator-like touches, for instance the computer team swapping pitches. This would be a really awkward time for me to hit a home run. Oh, there it is. Baseball Pros is about 75% of the way to being a game you'd want to play though. It took me the best part of 20 minutes to run through 2 innings. This means that you're looking at well over an hour for a game which is not really how an arcade game should work. But it's not enough of a simulator for the simulator crowd, because the scores are more cricket than they are base rounders. I'm not actually sure who this is for, even when I end my second innings on an absurdly convenient double play. It's not bad, but it's clearly here to attempt to sell this compilation outside its native market. Lastly, Pro Tennis, or as it gives itself away on the title screen, Pro Tennis Simulator. There's that word again. You wait 45 episodes for a Codemasters tennis game and 2 come along at once. This show is apparently now a complete archive of things. It's been so little time since I played Pete Sampras, it's still in my Mega SG. Again, this is a mildly warmed over computer game that costs £3 and was greeted with a resounding meh by the press. It gives itself away on the help screen, where it only uses one of the potentially 3 buttons on the NES controller. I've no idea how I manage it, but I initially get a quick practice mode against a motionless serving computer, and actually this isn't bad. It's a lot easier to direct shots than it was in Pete Sampras, for instance. I say I don't know how I got that because it's not in the menu, and disappointingly neither are a bunch of the other options that are in the £3 computer original. All we seem to have here is a generic tournament mode, and that's where my problems begin. It turns out I can't serve. At all. There's no auto here, and everything I do either runs long or short. On the plus side, in off-serve games I can hold my own, and I'm having a surprising amount of fun. In rally-type play, this is a good little game. I don't know if later opponents are going to get absurdly superhuman, but so far this totally works. Experimenting later, we solve the serve issue. You have to swipe at the ball just above their heads, but given you are supposed to be a pro tennist, you'd really think the margin for error would be a little larger than this. Even at best, it's a 50-50 thing, because you've got about 4 frames where you're going to hit the ball in, and even then it's usually right on the line. Nonetheless, I take the game to a tiebreak, which I immediately lose to love because of course. That said, at least one of the serves in this appear to me to hit the line, and I don't want to go all McEnroe about this, but that's chalk, damn it. Still, this is a neat little game that puts things that have sold for a lot more in the shade. Even so, this compilation is really just mildly warmed over computer games that you should play on computers. If you were being asked to pay £8 a game for cut down versions of £3 games, I absolutely think you'd have been pissed off, and N-Force's score is not wrong. Their review though. Rob claims to be confused by tennis. Confused. It's one button and a ball is coming towards you. Yes, the serve is difficult, but confusing? Do we think Rob is able to dress himself in the morning? Does his mum tie his shoes? Tim also found the controls a bit weird. Clearly I'm a tennis savant. I certainly wouldn't say you should buy this compilation. Even my cheapy plug-through version I was very lucky to get for a tenner. But if you're emulating, this isn't a bad way to play a quick tennis game or the least awful version of BMX Simulator, so maybe give that a punt. On the back page this month, the ghost of Virtua Racing, with Formula Retro Racing on PC. And that description is probably enough for most of you if this intro video isn't. Not least, music that sounds like Virtua Racing and a Lotus game had a baby. But FRR's a bit deeper, with a Grand Prix mode, 8 tracks, 20 cars on track, and everything you need in the kind of retro game you expect to cost at least £5. Excellent. Perfect time to leap in, with a sequel due early next year. Without an official VR on PC, then this is absolutely worth your time. Also worth your time will be next month's Yesterzine, I assume. I mean, it's not like I've written any of it, or chosen the magazine, or have any idea what it'll be about. If you want to find out a mere 3 weeks or so after I do, hit subscribe. And if you'd like to tempt other people here, the like button releases delicious snacks with which to bait them. Or something. I don't know. Go away. Okay, thanks, bye.